Today we're going to look at DSC resources and PowerShell 5. Now I've got a DSC resource here. I've got the process basically for building my lab that I'm using a DSC file for. Now just want to point out that the install modules here, you do not see any X modules with the exception of the DHCP module. You should not be using the X modules. I know they're out there in the wide world as examples to everyone, but frankly most of them have been replaced by later versions. Now we've got our variables here for my Active Directory, including primary DC, IP address, DNS name, and some passwords that usually you wouldn't save in this way, but we're just going to go ahead and put them in there. Now we've got a config file which includes the apply and the reset values. We've got all of the Active Directory components we're going to need, including DNS, DHCP, and we've got this step in here that says reboot after Active Directory join, but we should realistically have that right after the application installs. And then we're going to go ahead and do all the X component with the DHCP. So what we should get is the Active Directory components install, and then a reboot, and then the finished configuration after the reboot. And I've just got all the steps here, including the starts, the config. So what we're going to do is right off the bat, we're going to basically go ahead and say that we've already done most of these steps. So we've got our MOF file, we've got the last step. So we're just going to start the DSC configuration and let the install run. Now this obviously is going to take some time, particularly since Active Directory is not the smallest module, so we've kind of sped this up a little bit, not to waste too much time. Now while we're waiting for this to run, I kind of want to explain the situation here. What we've got is a 2019 machine, so by default we have PowerShell 5 and higher. And what they've done is between PowerShell 3 and 4, and I think even potentially it could be 4 and 5, you have a change in the way that DSC resources work, and in this case in particular the reboot element of it, because it's actually managed by the local config, same as other things. So what we've got at the end of this is a configuration that says, hey, pending a system reboot. Now despite the fact we've got in the system config to do a reboot, it's not rebooting. Now the reason for this is because it's no longer called under the local LMHS config, whatever the variable is, which we can see here. So where is it? Local configuration manager, right? So that's not working anymore under PowerShell 5. So you're like, okay, well, pending reboot didn't happen, even though we configured it. So this is where most of you will get lost immediately, because all the internet examples show that as working, because probably they're working with an earlier version. So what we do to solve this is we change the default config, and this is done. This would work a lot better if my copy paste function worked properly. There we go. And that changes the way that the configuration manager now works. So in PowerShell 5, these are now handled under the settings. Now don't worry about it if you can't follow on screen, that's totally okay. I've put all of this up on GitHub anyway, and I'll put a link in the video description so you can find that. So basically we have the same thing as before, with one subtle difference. Now I'm going to go ahead and run, but with this changed config. And again, we're going to speed up the video because Active Directory takes forever. And when this is finished, unlike our previous attempt, we're actually going to see a reboot. And what you should see is a nice little splash screen that says rebooting because of DSC resource. And if you do see that, then that means all is working fine. And this is kind of a step that you only really need to encounter with modern machines or machines that have had the updated PowerShell installed. So if you're not using the later versions, see, we're fine. We're being signed out by a DSC resource. All good.